Hey everybody, Jimmy Cox here. So this is going to be our first video for our book club. So last month I read Who Not How, which is a business development book, self-help book in a way, written by a guy named Dan Sullivan. He's the one who sort of co-wrote it with someone else who actually wrote it for him. So it was a bit of the book is actually an example of what the contents of the book talk about. So the title, Who Not How, essentially the crux of the book is, instead of always trying to figure out the how to do something, the tactics, the logistics, the intricacies of a certain project or task, this is all related to sort of entrepreneurship and business ownership, but it can be applied to sort of any field of work or even any sort of personal growth or personal development process that you're involved in. It's all about saying, figuring out what you're good at, what you like, what you're energized about. And instead of trying to always learn how to do everything on your own, is to figure out who already can fit into the mold of who's more maybe naturally skilled at the skill sets needed to achieve that goal. So, as a quick little example, it'd be like you always try to work out and you're always going to the gym and you're always trying to do it on your own. You're creating, you're looking online and getting these workouts that are all systems. So Monday's chest, Tuesday's legs, and you have all the breakdowns. You're recording all of your workouts and the weights you're doing. And after like 2, 3, 4 weeks, the motivation, the willpower starts to fall off. And that happens too. You can apply that to so many things where you do it on your own as best as we can, as best natured as we do. And yet it just doesn't really solve the issue. We don't actually achieve what we would be set out to do. And Who Not How is trying to teach entrepreneurs how to get beyond trying to do it themselves, to wear the hat of every single facet of the business and hire the people to do it. And it'd be like in the working out example, it'd be, instead of you trying to do it yourself or looking online to try and get courses or strategies or tips on how to work better or even how to get better motivated, the who part will be, who can you hire to help you achieve that goal? So in that case, it'd be hiring a personal trainer. Always costs a bit more money, but from my experience, hiring someone to help you follow through a process and a goal, like personal training, like exercise, like strength training, the results always speak for themselves. I've never had it where hiring someone to help you work out has been a negative experience compared to trying to do it on your own. And in business, it's the same thing. If you have a goal or a task that you want to achieve, but you're not sure how to do it, you don't really necessarily have the time to do it, their process is to say, find a who can manage it. So the guy who wrote this book is actually Dan Sullivan's who. They met sort of serendipitously at these conferences. They figured out they wanted to talk about this stuff, and Dan's like, let's put this to practice. He got this guy to actually write the book for him. But then they would go back and review and have these discussions about the book. And I think that's like a really neat thing, because I try to do so many things on my own, and I think we all do, especially as parents, business owners, employees, any sort of task. Home ownership, like fixing stuff and being handy. We all try to do these things on our own, but honestly, they can be very tricky at times. I like to hire out. I hire out tasks for people at home. It's way easier. So that's sort of the crux of the book. And then there's 2 more points I want to make quickly. I want to keep this under 5 minutes. Always measure backwards. So their thing is, as you're hiring out and as you're doing these tasks, they would talk about how, especially high performance, high goal oriented people, they would set these tasks, these goals that are super hard to achieve, and they would have these ideals of what they wanted to do. And again, this is not just business, like, take New Year's resolutions. We all have these ideals of what we want to do, whether it's eat less, smoke less, drink less, eat more healthy food, work out more, watch less TV. and these ideals of what we should be doing, how we should be acting. And the always measure backwards is a phrase they used often to say, why don't we, instead of measuring from the ideal of moving forward, so where we are today, to some future forward date, how about we take where we are today and see how far we've come and measure backwards? Because if I, let's say, started working out in 2 weeks, I might think, I'm not seeing any results. I'm not any stronger. I even feel weaker. I feel sore. My body's sore. I'm not waking up. My energy is not as good, because you're just starting to go through the motions. So if I keep measuring myself to the ideal down the road, well, I probably think this isn't really working, and there's potential that I would actually self-sabotage my efforts on this motivation, or losing weight, or eating better, or waking up at 6 in the morning. If all of a sudden you don't do this a few times, you start thinking, you're slipping on your tasks, and you start getting hard on yourself, and you start talking about how you need to work harder and just like use your willpower to get through it. So always measure backwards is, instead of measuring to the ideal, measure how far we've come from. So working out would be, hey, 2 weeks in, yeah, I'm not going to see any results, but I can let myself off the hook, because 2 weeks ago I was doing nothing. Or if you wanted to eat less or drink less, you could always look backwards and say, at that point, I was literally completely not where I was wanted to be, and now I've at least moved even an inch to where I would go, and feel good about that. There's a phrase that goes along with this, and it's called, it's a sort of a metaphor to where often, as we're moving through life in any capacity, we often, look up the mountaintop and see how much further we need to go to get to this point. And that point can represent anything you want to do. We often stop to look down to think how far we've actually come. And we all have done amazing things, no matter whether they're big or small. We can never compare ourselves to everybody in the earth, everybody around us, everybody we know, everybody in North America, Canada, the world. We really only have to compare ourselves to our past self to see where we are today. And there's always a lesson in every experience, as hard as that, those experiences can be. But it's the always measure backward. So that was really cool. And the final thing was 3 wins for the day. So again, sort of sticking on the theme of, not being so hard on yourself and being able to measure backwards. How do you actually do that? So their little tactical approach was take 3 wins that you had throughout the day and write them down at night, and then write down 3 wins you want to have for the next day. Keep it to 3, not longer, not shorter. And these can be simple things like, you wake up and you put your pants on, or you get up and you get in your car and you go to work. There's a win, right? Depending on where you're at in life, your wins will look different compared to someone else's. And it's very easy to allow these things to become super big projects, but then you just constantly look at this list and realize you're not achieving it. And then you try to procrastinate on something, you move on to another goal, and all of a sudden, it's weeks in and you feel like you haven't made any progress because maybe you haven't been able to notice those small shifts that you've been making throughout the weeks leading up to this. So I started doing these things on my Trello board where I'd write 3 wins for the day, and it could be little things like, one day I didn't feel like I did a whole lot, so I wrote, had a morning coffee, listen to really great music, and something about work or something like that. But like very simple stuff. And I can look back to that and apply it to my done list afterwards. And then I get to see all the things that I've finished in work capacity, how much I've actually done. And that adds up after a long time. So you start developing these habits of noticing these wins. And the wins, the book doesn't talk about it too much, but to me, the wins represent gratitude. So the wins represent you being grateful for where you are in life, for the things that you have in your life, for the people that you have in your life, instead of just the big moments. And it's about noticing and appreciating the intricacies of the day, which in the end, in more of a self-help spiritual aspect, it's being present with the day, not constantly doing more things, trying to add more to your plate and to move on to the next day, always a moving to-do list. It's like Wayne Dyer would always say, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And this measure 3 wins of the day is a nice way just to sort of pick 3 things that we're being with, that we've done, and not to constantly be running on this, treadmill of constant to-do lists and never really noticing maybe the small things through the day. So I really, really liked this book, and I've started to think about it and applying it to different facets of my life, not just work. I definitely applied to work because I hire people here, but it was great. So anyway, that's me. That's this. So next month we're reading a Martin Short book, which is more of an autobiography. It's not really a specific business book, but I really like Martin Short. I think he's really cool. So yeah, see you next time. Thanks now. Ciao.